right, I think we will get started. I want to welcome everyone to this month's Understanding ADHD Speaker Series event, hosted by the ADHD Empowerment Meetup Community and the nonprofit Children and Adults with ADHD, or CHAD for short, of San Fernando Valley and Los Angeles. I'm Suzanne Sophos, our executive director. I'm also an adult with ADHD and mom to a fourth grader with ADHD. CHAD has been hosting this speaker series for the last 6 years, bringing experts on the topic of ADHD directly to the community. This event is just a part of our work to educate, support, and advocate for adults and children living with ADHD. We also host online peer support groups for adults with ADHD, young women with ADHD, and parents of ADHD children. All our groups are facilitated by our dedicated volunteers, and all of our work is funded by donations. Our mission is to ensure that everyone who needs ADHD education and support can receive it, regardless of finances. So there's never a fee to attend our events. However, we are a nonprofit organization and our survival does depend on donations and membership fees. So we kindly ask that if you're able and you find our work worthwhile, you consider making a $5 or $10 donation tonight to help support our work. And I know we're probably all experts in Zoom by now, so I'm not really going to go over these in too much detail. We're going to keep everybody muted during the presentation. We ask that you heavily use the chat feature. You can use it at any time during the presentation. If you have questions, if you think something's awesome, if you just want to make a comment, if you want to give support to someone, feel free to use the chat for that at any time. And we'll also be taking your questions tonight. So if there's anything that comes up during the presentation that you have a question about, or think you might like answered after the presentation, you can go ahead and put that in the chat at any time, and we'll capture that and get to it at the end. So we'd like to start off all of our meetings with a brief evidence-based overview about what ADHD is and how it impacts individuals. That just keeps us all on the same page. ADHD is a lifelong neurobiological condition. It impacts brain function in a way that impairs executive function, delays social emotional development, and impairs our self-regulation. So rather than thinking of individuals with ADHD simply as having too much energy or too little energy, instead a hallmark of ADHD is actually impaired self-regulation. So that's trouble finding a happy medium with our energy and our effort. Our challenge is getting our bodies and our minds in the right frame for the task at hand. Individuals with ADHD can veer toward hyperactive or inattentive or be a mix of the two. For people with ADHD, getting our bodies and our minds to cooperate and serve up just the right amount of attention and focus for the task at hand can be extremely challenging. Studies show that if ADHD is not diagnosed and well treated, ADHD-related challenges can significantly decrease life expectancy by up to 13 years. The upside to that hard news to hear is that studies also show that life expectancy and outcomes are dramatically improved by two things: proper diagnosis and a lifelong holistic treatment plan. A holistic treatment plan is one that includes a combination of ADHD education, skills training, medical treatment, and peer support. And for the parents out there, another really huge reason for good outcomes is for parents, when parents are involved in their children's treatment with ADHD, when they take classes to understand how to best approach their children's behavioral challenges and educational challenges and developmental challenges. So if you're a parent and you're here tonight, that is really good news for your child to have such a great parent to be here. A little bit about executive function, and I am not going to go into great detail in this because we're going to have an expert chat about this with us. But executive functioning is basically both delayed and impaired in those of us that have ADHD. Our executive functions are what help us do things. They help individuals manage and regulate our planning, decision-making, learning, judgment, emotions, and actions. So basically, if we're doing something, we're using executive function. There are several models for explaining executive function. The one that we show here is from Dr. Thomas Brown, who is one of the most well-known ADHD specialists. You can see that there are multiple executive functions, things like activation, focus, effort, emotions, memory, and action. And they all work together at different times and in different combinations depending on what we're trying to accomplish. You can think of executive function skills as a muscle that can be strengthened and developed. Executive function coaching and skills building practice, along with other ADHD treatments, can be a strong way to support the executive function challenges that ADHD brings. I'm so pleased tonight to welcome Sean McCormick. Sean is an education specialist and an executive function coach. I also had the great pleasure of hearing him speak a couple of weeks ago at Seth Perler's TIFOS Summit. And I got so much wonderful information for myself that I'm so pleased that he's here tonight to be able to talk to us about executive function skills. As I mentioned, they're a part of everything we do. And they're delayed and impaired in those of us with ADHD. So tonight, Sean is going to help parents of children with ADHD better understand and help support their child's executive function challenges at school and at home. And I should mention that in addition to being an executive function specialist, Sean works with middle, high school, and college students. And he also hosts the Earn More Tutoring podcast. So I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to turn it over to Sean. Welcome, Sean. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you so much for that warm and kind introduction. And thank you, everybody who's here tonight, spending your time with us and me. I really appreciate you giving your attention to this. It's something I'm super, super passionate about. I've been excited about this for like 10 months, I think, since Suzanne and I discussed this. So I'm really glad you're here. And I think, why don't we just jump into it, because I want to make sure I give you everything I got, and then also we have time to discuss at the end. So I will share my screen. Let me pull this up here. I'm going to go to Canva. That's where I do all my present. All right, can everyone see that? Is that good, Suzanne?
That's great.
It's good. Okay, awesome. So fostering executive function at school and home. How do you do it? Why is it important? Let's talk about it. So before we start, I'd love for you to drop in the chat. Are you a parent, professional, both, or something else? Just, an interested adult? Drop it in there. I'd love to know kind of who's here, who the audience is, so I can get a better feel. So I see here, we got parents, Rachel and Barbara, parents. Suzanne is also parent, adult with ADHD, professional, a lot of parents. Okay, good to know, good to know. Okay, so it looks like that is the majority, but I think no matter why you're here, you'll get value out of this, but it's especially geared towards parents and professionals who work with students with ADHD. So let's go on to the next one. The other thing I want to know is why you're here. Like, what attracted you to this presentation? It doesn't have to be long. What are you wanting to learn? What's your intention for this presentation? What are you hoping to get out of it? So if you have a second, drop that into the chat box. Like, why? What's your why for this? Are you dedicated to continuous development around executive function? So Dee wants to learn how to help teenagers and young adults. Claudine wants her son to be independent. Absolutely. Good to know. Help your child stay focused during school, Mike said. Good, good. All right. So good. I think it's really important to know what your intention is when you're starting with something or working on something. Kind of helps you visualize what you're working towards. So before we start, I want to make sure like this is coming from the fire hose. I got a lot I'm going to share with you. Don't worry about getting everything. I do encourage you to take notes, close all your other chat boxes and emails and text messages and all the other things that could distract you, and really have an experience here. That's what I'm hoping to give you, or for us to create together. And think about one thing that you can take away from this presentation. So that's all. Your main job is just identify one thing that you feel like you can take away and work on, because we can only master one thing at a time. So have you heard your child say, "I don't know where to find my homework"? Or maybe you've heard them say, "I'm pretty sure my teacher doesn't need me to turn this in. Don't worry about it." Meanwhile, you're checking their portal, you're seeing that it says missing. Maybe you're even seeing a teacher comment that says, "When is this going to come in?" But somehow your child is sure that they don't need to turn it in. Or maybe you've heard this from your student: "Don't worry, I'll just talk to my teacher in class about making that up. I don't need to work with a tutor. I don't need to work with a coach. You guys worry by yourself." Maybe you've heard these things before when working with your student. And I wonder, does this make you feel angry, frustrated, confused? If you feel any of those things, drop it in the chat what you feel when you're hearing those types of things, or what you've heard if it's different than that. So, surprise, your child may have executive function skill deficits. Now, I know most of you probably already knew that, but the reason I highlighted the word skill here is because, like Suzanne said, these are skills that can be developed like a muscle, right? You can build these skills, you can strengthen them. And so that's what I want you to take away from this, is that there is a ton of hope and possibility if you work on these skills and if you learn how to facilitate building those skills. Now, are you hoping for your student to be able to track, complete, and submit their assignments, not just stuff it into their backpack and then bring it back home, but actually submit it? Are you hoping that they're able to use backwards planning and chunking to prepare for tests, quizzes, summative projects, all those things that require multiple steps they can't just do on the bus on the way to school? And maybe you're hoping that your child learns how to proactively communicate with teachers to get their needs met, so they don't just let that missing assignment go for 3 weeks. They actually say, "Hey, I don't understand how to do this. Could you please explain it? Could you clarify the directions?" If you're looking for those, drop a yes or a no in the chat box. Let me know. I'm wondering if this is what people are looking for, learning how to support. Is it a yes? Is that what you're looking for, those skills? Okay, I see some yes with exclamation points. Heck yes. Yes, all those things. Okay, so I think I'm in the right place right now. I'm glad to see that. So I want to give you a little background on why I do this. I was a public school special education teacher, and in 2020, I decided to start providing organization coaching. At the time, I literally had never heard the word executive function before, even as a special ed teacher. It never really came up. It was always so focused on math and reading and organization, but not executive function wasn't used so much even in the public school where I was working. And this is a picture of my daughter, Aliana. The other reason I decided to start coaching on the side was that I realized I wanted more free time to be with my child, and commuting 2 hours every day was pretty difficult 5 days a week. So I was trying to find a way to be closer to my family during this special time. And as I started coaching students, I just realized I'm always helping kids learn how to organize all their assignments, learn how to communicate with their teachers, learn how to track and manage things. And so I realized that was my focus. So even 3 years ago, I realized that ADHD coaching was where I was most valuable to people. And I really knew I was onto something when I started in February 2020. And by December 2020, I was working with 30 different students and families. And it was at that point I realized, I think this is my calling, this is my vocation. But then I started getting feedback like this from parents. So this parent said, "By helping my child with his executive functioning skills, our son was able to focus more on school, stay on top of his homework. Since he was more focused on school, he was able to reap the reward of better grades. His video gaming decreased tremendously." Now, I don't know about you, but I'm in a lot of circles where people focus on helping students with school. And this is one of the biggest challenges that come up, is kids are watching YouTube or playing video games when they really should be doing schoolwork, right? And they're ignoring their responsibilities. And I realized that it wasn't like I was intentionally trying to get kids to stop playing video games. I was really just trying to help them learn how to manage school. But that was the result, was that when they got the attention, when they learned the skills, those habits, those maladaptive habits started to decrease because they felt confident, they felt engaged, they felt powerful, that they could manage school. And so I found that, yes, this is what I want to do. This was the feedback I needed to keep moving in this direction boldly. But the other part of this was, as I started to focus more and more on executive function skills, I learned from people like Dr. Adele Diamond and Seth Perler that these skills are actually the most critical skills we can learn. They're the keys to our futures, right? So, for example, Dr. Adele Diamond, she found in her meta-analysis, so her study of all the different studies on executive function skills, she found that executive function skills are more important for school readiness than IQ or entry-level reading or math. And that just blew my mind, because I realized, why are we so focused on teaching what happened during the Revolutionary War when we really need to start focusing on how do you organize your assignments? How do you plan out your days? How do you look to the future? That's the skill that is so valuable, that's going to carry people through life. But not only was it for school readiness, school success, executive function skills predict both math and reading competence throughout school years. So it's better, clearly, to focus on developing those executive function skills first, because then children can apply them to anything that they want to get better at, like math, reading, soccer, whatever it may be. Now, drop a yes in the chat box if you wish that your teachers focused a little bit more on your executive function skill development during your school years. I'm getting some yes, and that is why I share this, because I do believe that all K through 12 teachers should be educated on how to support the executive function skills of their students, right? It shouldn't just be on the content, it should also be on how do we teach them to manage this effectively. Now, this actually, it's like going down the rabbit hole, right? Like Alice in Wonderland. As I learned more and more about it, I found that executive function skills are also predictors of marital harmony, right? People with better executive function skills are more dependable partners. They're less likely to act on impulse, therefore leading to less rates of divorce. They improve public safety because people who are impulsive are more reckless. Physical health is improved because people are able to inhibit their desire to eat junk food and want to focus more on things that have a long-term benefit to their bodies. Quality of life is improved. And these are all peer-reviewed studies, as you can see over here on the right. Now, I know everybody knows this. They know the value of executive functional skills, but the data is beautiful to me because it says that we're focused on the right thing when we focus on developing these skills. And at that point, 10 months after I started working on this, I realized I have to resign from my work as a public school teacher so I can solely focus on teaching these skills to the larger community. And so when I did that, I started my business called Executive Function Specialists. And the mission that I identified for the business was to guide middle, high school, and college students in overcoming procrastination, disorganization, and educational anxiety by teaching them time management, prioritization, and communication skills, so they feel motivated, prepared, and empowered. And I took all that information directly from the feedback of the parents that I worked with and the students. Parents were telling me their kids were procrastinating, disorganized, anxious. And then when I realized when I taught them these skills, time management, prioritization, communication, they felt motivated, prepared, empowered. They woke up. And so that is the mission of my business. I'm proud to say that after 3 years, we've helped over 200 families. We've ran 13,000 executive function coaching sessions. And one of my favorite things is that the feedback from the community has been unanimously positive. And so what I want to teach you today is the exact process that we teach to students over and over that really works magic. And it's drawn from my work as a special education teacher, as a wraparound support provider, as a parent. I'm taking from all my experiences, and I created a process with my team that I'd like to share with you today that you can use for your students. And so this process that I'm going to explain to you, I've been tinkering with it for years. And it's a hypothesis because it's something that I keep trying on different students in different scenarios. And I found that with more and more development, with more iterations, it works. And so I call it the order of operations for helping students develop executive function skills. So to teach you about this process, I'm going to introduce you to a student named Edward. Edward's a junior in public high school. He had a private assessment that found he had inattentive ADHD. He qualified for a 504 plan, but not an IEP. And teachers had described him as a daydreamer, that he needs to put in more effort. He said some had called him lazy at times. And parents had tried tutoring, medication, therapy. And while there were flashes of help at times, it hadn't solved the problem because Edward was still getting F's and D's in his classes, still getting feedback from teachers saying, hey, Edward, this was due 2 weeks ago. Why isn't this turned in? And he really didn't have a clear plan of action to resolve his challenges around school. So in my first meeting with Edward, I began like this. Edward, it's so great to see you. Is there anything pressing on your mind you would like to discuss before we work on school items? And Edward said, well, no, but thank you for asking. And I could see a little glow from him that he was appreciative that I just didn't say, Edward, we've got to get to work. There's so much you're missing. Like, come on, let's get to work, right? I wasn't overwhelming him. I wasn't causing more anxiety. I was just asking him what's on his mind, and he appreciated that. Now, just by asking him that question, and by doing this with students, countless students over the years, they go from this first image on the left, kind of overwhelmed, anxious, to they start to calm down. They start to feel that sense of flow, connection with someone that cares about them, that's not there to add more anxiety or weight to their day. And Edward was expecting me to say, you have so many missing assignments. Do you just not care about school? Like, why are you doing this? Maybe he was even afraid that I was going to call him lazy. And see, the challenge with students is that when you tell them things like, or you ask them, why can't you just turn it in? Or, why can't you do this? They start to see themselves as lazy. And what happens in that instance is their minds start to close because they start to see themselves as a fixed mindset, right? I'm a lazy person, or I'm flawed. I'm not capable, right? And so the key to helping a student is that you have to open their mind back up, right? And so when you start with a question like, hey, is there anything on your mind before we work on school things? You're showing care for them. You're showing kindness. It's almost music to their ears. And when you start to lower that affective filter and show that sense of care, you create a secure attachment with a student where they feel safe working with you. They don't feel like you're a threat to them. Like maybe there are other people who are kind of pushing them to do more and they're overwhelmed and they don't have the skills. And I said, you're welcome. Right after he said, no, thank you for asking. I said, you're welcome. Then I said, so for you to feel like this is a great use of your time, Edward, what would be different in your life by the end of this session, right? We had 50 minutes to meet. I said, well, what do you want out of this? And Edward said, well, my history teacher told me I could raise my grade to a B if I just finished this essay, but I can't figure out how to start it, right? Has anyone had that experience where you have some big project and you just don't know where to start? You're just like avoiding it. That's how Edward was feeling about this assignment, right? This big history assignment. I said, good to know. What if we make an outline? You want to try that? And he said, okay. So we created the outline. It took maybe 10 minutes because he knew all the information. He went to class every day. He knew what he was supposed to work on. He just couldn't get it out in a structured, clear way. I said, well, what if we write sentence starters for each outline? So we took that outline, we put sentence starters in there, right? Just started to fill it in, kind of fill in the blanks. And he did that. And about 30 minutes later, Edward had completed most of this essay, right? This thing that was overwhelming him. One of my favorite mentors, she told me, the way I know what to work on first is whatever's pressing on my frontal lobe, whatever's sitting there, right? And so that's what Edward did. He just worked on the thing that was pressing most. And the way I was able to figure that out was I just asked him, what's the most pressing thing on your mind? Now, Edward, what if you upload that essay to Google Classroom and leave a note to your teacher that says, would I be able to earn partial credit for what I've completed and turn in the rest soon? So he sent that to his teacher, right? He was a little nervous, like, maybe I should just finish the whole thing first. Or, a lot of students with ADHD I've worked with, they have that perfectionism too. Like they haven't done it, but they also want it to be perfect. And so they don't turn it in, right? But sometimes just turning something in gets the ball rolling. Now, what just happened? I want to kind of break this down for you. By prioritizing my connection with Edward and his well-being over productivity, Edward was more productive, right? So that's the first key, is that you cannot focus on productivity. you have to focus on creating that secure attachment. And that's the first P in this order of operations. So I use this acronym PEMDAS because everybody knows it, the order of operations for math. But this is also can be used as an acronym as an order of operations for helping someone with executive function challenges. So prioritize a secure connection for them first. How many times have you worked with someone, maybe it's a parent, and they've said to you, you just need to get this done. And you're like, I didn't come to you to tell me what to do. I came to you because I'm feeling overwhelmed. I wanted to feel heard, right? So if that's happened before, then you know that feeling. And that's why it's so important to start with that secure connection. So a couple of helpful tips for you if you're looking to prioritize that secure connection with a student you're working with are always clear the deck, right? Just say, hey, is there anything on your mind you want to discuss before we work on whatever it may be? Second, mirror their feelings to create empathy. If they say, I'm so frustrated by this assignment, don't say, well, that's so easy. Why are you frustrated? Say, yeah, I can see how that'll be overwhelming. Plus you have 6 other classes. Like, I feel you. I'm sorry, this is tough. And then use your tone, words, and expressions to invite connection, right? I'm such a big proponent of tone. I think especially for people with ADHD, I know myself as an adult with ADHD, that when someone speaks to me in a kind tone, it feels so much better than when someone says something in a tone that feels judgmental, condescending, or scary, right? So using that tone saying, hey, are you open to this? Curiosity, inquiry, that's going to allow someone to feel connected and safe with you. Now, I want you to drop in the chat box, how do you make others feel safe and connected in your interactions? What are some of your favorite strategies for making someone feel connected so that they don't feel overwhelmed when they're interacting with you, or maybe when you're helping them with something? Could be something you do at work. Maybe it's something you do in your home. Drop it in the chat box because I know this is a powerful community and other people are going to learn from your strategies and your best practices. So Suzanne shared, I try to get my son's level and use really calm and patient language. Exactly. My daughter's 3. And if I stand above her and look down at her and tell her to do something, it's like scary for her. So I always try to get low, speak to her. They say low and slow. Michelle shared eye contact and silence. That's great. Yeah, the eye contact is magic. Eyes are the windows to the soul. Just listening. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Pamela. So now that Edward was feeling safe, it was time to dive a little bit deeper. So I said, Edward, can you show me what your current grades are? And Edward said, well, I've got a D in English, a D- in AP Chemistry, a C- in US History, a D+ in Geometry, C- in Spanish Year 2, and he had an A in Advisory. He was good at Advisory. He was doing well there. But all Ds and Cs. And that was really hard for his parents because when they had taken that assessment, they had shown he had an above average IQ. This was not a student who was lacking the cognitive ability. But like we said, it's not about IQ. It's about those executive function skills. So I asked Edward, I said, what grades do you want to see on your report card at the end of the semester? I just paused. And Edward said, well, geez, I would love to have all A's and B's if possible, right? And I said, how would that feel to have those grades? And he said, incredible, right? You could see it. I could see it in his facial expression. I could see it in his energy. He was excited about this idea, right? And this is where we talk about that self-regulation piece. We're getting Edward to self-regulate himself here because when he's imagining his goal, when he's imagining how it feels to reach that goal, he's learning how to tap into his powerful emotions that can help him reach his goals. Now, Jim Quick, this is a guy who's like a speed reading guru to the stars. He's taught everybody from Will Smith to Oprah and Elon Musk. He said information combined with emotion creates memory, right? And so this is one way that you can empower a student is you have them set a goal, and you ask them how it would feel to reach that goal. So I asked Edward, I said, will you write that goal down on tasks? Now, if you're not familiar with tasks, tasks is an application in Gmail, Google Docs, Google Sheets. It's something that's easily accessible to most students because most students use the Google Suite. And so he just popped out that little sidebar and he put those goals, right, for this semester in tasks. And if you don't know where that is, it's actually just on the sidebar of your mail. It's this little blue checkbox. If you don't see it at the bottom, you'll be able to pop it out with a little caret, but really helpful tool. Now, the reason I had Edward write down his goals was because Dr. Gail Matthews of Dominican University led a study on goal setting with nearly 270 participants, and she found that people who wrote down their goals in the study were 42% more likely to achieve those goals. Now, talk about a superpower, right? Like, think about anything that you want. If you write it down, you're literally 42% more likely to reach that goal. So that's a pretty simple and small step that can have some big return on investment. So that's the second key in this order of operations to helping children with executive function challenges is establish SMART goals. Now, the grades is an easy SMART goal, right? It's specific, right? It's either an A or it's not an A. It's measurable. The teacher's putting that in the grade book. It's actionable. He can take action on it. It's realistic because it's within that band of grades, and it's time oriented. It has to happen by the end of the semester. So grades are a very simple way to set a SMART goal. So a couple of helpful tips for SMART goals is write them down. That's the first one. Like whatever you want, I challenge you, put it in the chat box right now. If there's something you want to do, throw it out into the world, write it down somewhere, write it on a Post-it, put it on your mirror, whatever it takes, so that you're looking at that every day. And that actually empowers your basically your subconscious system to pick up on cues that are going to help you reach that goal. I always encourage people with working memory challenges, use tasks or another cloud-based tool so you can't lose your goals. Anytime you log into your email, it's going to be there. It's not a notebook that you can lose. And then make sure you can measure the goal. Make sure it's something that's inflating you and strengthening you and not deflating you because it's impossible to reach. Set manageable, achievable goals. So how do you track your goals? I'd love for some people to drop in the chat box what tools work for you, whether it's a Moleskine or a whiteboard. I'm wondering what are people using in this group that helps them reach their goals? Where do you track your goals? Drop it in the chat box. Suzanne shared tasks in Asana have really transformed my ability. That's good to know. What are other people using? Yeah, drop it in the chat box so other people can learn from what works for you. So I said, Edward, now that you know what grades you want to earn, can you show me what assignments are missing and what will be due soon? And Edward said, well, I've got to check on Canvas, make sure that I have no missing assignments on there. And then I check on Google Classroom because my other two classes are there. And finally, I have to check for my chemistry class, I have to check on this website because the teacher refuses to use Canvas or Google Classroom. I said, wow, that is a lot to track every day, especially for a kid with executive function challenges. So I suggest we make a list with each assignment and its point values in tasks. Are you up for that? Now, why did I say, are you up for that? Why would I ask this to Edward over and over? When you ask someone a yes or no question, it's what's known as a trial yes. If you can get them to say yes to that, they're more likely to say yes to something that's going to be more challenging. So for example, if you go to the car dealership and you walk in, the car dealer salesperson says, do you need a new car? Well, yes, of course you need a car because you're there. So you say yes to that. And then he says something else. Do you want something with heated seats? Okay, yeah, that would be nice. Let's say you're living in Buffalo or New York and yeah, okay, that's going to be helpful. So now you're moving in that direction towards those more expensive cars. Now you're kind of find something you like and he says, would you like me to make sure your car is safe at all times? Well, yes, of course, I'm about to spend $20,000 to $30,000 on this. I guess I want a security system. And they say, okay, that's only an additional $5,000, right? So these are called trial yeses and they're used by marketing professionals all the time. But as a coach, as a parent, you can also use them to help your child. So instead of saying to your child, do you have any homework? They're going to say, no, don't worry about it. You could say, would you like to earn some screen time? Yes, right? They'd be excited about that. Then you say, well, what time can you complete insert homework assignment by so you can earn that screen time, right? So now they know what they want. They've got this thing they're looking forward to. And you just ask them to kind of put this little assignment between that and screen time. So it's motivating them, right? So you're getting them to buy in at first, and then you're upping the ante a little bit. Now, what Edward and I began to do was we opened up his tasks And then we started to put in all those assignments as subtasks, right? So he said, I will earn a B in English. And so then he said, well, the assignments I have to do are this essay on the Old Man and the Sea, worth 30 points, poetry assignment, 5 points. And he just listed all that out. And I said, now, before you start working on this, Edward, don't you want to make sure you get credit for anything you work on? And he said, well, yeah, I mean, definitely. So then I said, well, then let's make sure to email your teacher to confirm you can still earn credit. Because isn't it the worst thing in the world when you do a bunch of work on some type of project or school assignment, and then you just realize that you're no longer working on that project, or your business has moved on from that, or for whatever reason, that's no longer relevant. That, I don't know, to me, that just feels like the most epic waste of time. And so I didn't want to put Edward in that position. So I said, does that work for you if we contact your teachers? Now, Edward said, well, I don't want to bother my teachers. They have so many other students. I don't know if that's a good idea. And I said, well, how about this? I'll make it very easy for you. We're going to ping them, right? I'm going to explain to you what pinging your teacher is. Okay. So when you ping your teacher, you start with a pleasant introduction. You say, hey, I hope you're doing well, right? Most students don't realize that they shouldn't write their email in the subject line and then, maybe just one line in an email. They don't know how to do this. So like we said, it's a skill. So the second step of pinging their teacher is inform and inquire. So something like this. I noticed my grade in your class is currently a D. My goal is to earn a B or an A. My plan is to complete the following assignments in this order. So Edward took those assignments he wrote down on task and he just dropped them into this email. Now in this email, he's developing that skill of self-awareness. He's developing an ability to set goals, even micro goals here, and communicate those. He's using self-advocacy. And then he said, is there anything else you suggest I do to work toward my goal of earning a A in your class? So he's inquiring, he's using curiosity. He's also making an executive decision around what he wants. And then the N stands for negotiate. So will I be able to earn full credit if I complete these assignments and submit them to you by, and he chooses the date, right? He's going to choose something that works for him, and he's negotiating this with his teacher. And then you end with gratitude. Thank you for your guidance, right? He's self-aware. He's self-aware to know like the teachers don't owe him anything, right? I'm helping him develop that skill. A lot of students with executive function challenges, they resort to this. My teacher hates me, right? But that's really not the case in most cases, is that they haven't gone through the steps to problem solve with their teacher. Now, there are some crotchety teachers out there, but for the most case, teachers want to help students. And so this is one way they can tap into that vein of getting help. But after the email, Edward said, wow, that took a long time. How would I ever do this for every class, right? And I said, well, there's a magical thing called templates in Google. So templates is a setting you can turn on in Google, where you can turn on this templates feature, and then he could take whatever email he wrote and he can save it as a template. So here's some examples: checking in, therapist options. These are things I use for my business. But I've taken all the templates that I've used with students, such as problem solving around missing assignments, asking for extended time, asking a teacher how to prepare for a test, correcting attendance, getting clear directions on tests, reaching out for an informational interview. All these templates I've worked with students, I've put them into this one document. If you want a copy of that document for free, you can go to efspecialist.com and click on the resources button at the bottom, or just go to this link, efspecialist.com/subscribe, and it will send you all those free resources. So you can have them to use with your student, the kid you're coaching. Some of them are if you're looking for a job and transitioning from college. So I highly recommend checking those out. They've been really helpful for students I've worked with. So within 5 minutes, though, of sending that proposed plan to his teacher, the teacher responded. He was nervous to look at that email. And the teacher said, Edward, I love to see you taking ownership of your work. Yes, you can absolutely turn those items in to get credit. And if you need any help with any of it, come to my office hours on Thursday at 3 p.m. So this is the type of response I see students get from their teachers over and over and over, because teachers love nothing more than to see their students self-advocate, make plans, right? That is music to the teacher's ear. So when they start to get that feedback, they realize, oh, this is actually a really good idea. This actually makes my life much easier. So that is the third step in this PEMDAS order of operations for coaching students with executive function challenges is make everyone aware of the goals, email the teacher, inform the parents, right? Get everybody on the same page. And that's going to empower you to know what to do, right? If you work on something, but you don't make the teacher aware of it, then they might say, oh, you can't turn this in anymore. Now, a couple helpful tips when you're trying to make people aware of goals: email a plan to the teacher and get feedback, externalize them, put them up on the bathroom mirror, put them on Google Tasks, look at it every day, review goals at every meeting with that student, say, hey, these are the things you said you want to work on, make them externalized. Now I want to ask you, drop it in the chat box. How do you leverage the support of others to reach your goals? What are ways that you involve others, whether it's being in a mastermind group or a support group like this? What are some ways that help you leverage the support of others so that you can reach your goals? Feel free to drop that in if you have some ideas on what's helpful for you. Yes, definitely. This is one of the best ways, is being a part of a group like this. Thanks for sharing that, Suzanne. So I said, okay, now we know you're going to get credit for this, Edward, but you still have to get the work done. Do you want to make a plan? Now, Edward agreed. He said, yes, I want to make a plan. And this is where I started asking him questions. I call them solution-focused questions. I said, what assignment would have the biggest impact on your class with the lowest grade, right? So what class has the lowest grade? And then what assignment has the biggest impact? And Edward was easily able to figure this out because he had written the point values of every assignment in each class. So this made it very easy for him to figure out what's the priority, right? And then I said, now how long would you be willing to work on that assignment before? So I had him set his own executive goal and decide how long he wanted to do it for. And I just held him accountable. Now, the way he did this was he actually just started taking these little tasks. And the neat thing about tasks is that you can actually drag tasks like this and put them in your calendar. So Edward started chunking out those tasks into discrete time-based calendar events. And when he had done whatever amount of time he committed to, so for one of these really challenging things, he said 5 minutes. I'd say, hey, 5 minutes are up. Do you want to keep working on it? Now, what do you think he said? After someone started something that they were avoidant of, there's probably some catharsis. I know when I get started on something I've been avoiding, after 5 minutes, I'm like, all right, I got this. I can do this. You know, once you just get started, it's like going to the gym or anything. You start to feel the energy, but it's the avoidance that feels so overwhelming and heavy sometimes. And then I always ask this question: what do you think the next step is, right? Kids know the answer. They know the answer better than we do, even if we're teachers, even if we're professors, because kids know what the teacher said in class. They know what the teacher put on the board. They know what their friends are saying in class. So they know what the correct step is. You just have to ask them most of the time. And so that is the next step in this order of operations, is divide that goal into chunks. Just keep breaking those goals into smaller and smaller chunks. And it's going to allow that student to see, okay, I can work on this, I can write one sentence. And then when they write one, they write two. Now, a few helpful strategies are for dividing goals into chunks. Get as granular as you need to. No step is too small when you're working towards a goal. Second, use solution-focused questions rather than commands, right? Kids typically hate when someone tells them what to do. So when you ask them a question, say, hey, what do you think's next? What do you think you should work on? What's the next small step you can take? Then they start to feel empowered. And then last, use timers so they can see there's an end to their working. So I use the time timer. It's a little timer. You can see the time slipping away, and just knowing there's an end to this tedious task can be really helpful. Now, the other part of why solution-focused questioning is so important is that there's been multiple studies that found that for example, when people who were hopeless alcoholics, like they had tried everything and nothing was working, when doctors used motivational interviewing, when they said, what do you think you should do next? When they started empowering them by using solution-focused questioning, that had a big impact on people who had addiction and alcoholism issues, when they empowered them to make decisions rather than forcing them into something that had worked for others, but maybe wasn't going to work for them. Now, I want to ask you, drop it in the chat box. What helps you get started on something you are avoiding? What, is it texting someone that you know? Is it setting a timer? Is it creating a reward for yourself? I'd love to know the creative ways people in this group are getting task initiating on things that feel challenging to them. So Tiffany shared setting a timer or having a deadline. Yeah, that's a great one to share. I know I love using the timer and and that also with the deadline, it becomes more of a SMART goal. What are things people use to work on things that they're avoiding? Time timer, yes, 100%. So I said to Edward, for you to reach your goals, you're going to need to work between meetings, right? Even you've got these lofty goals of earning A's and B's. Are you up for that? Yes, no, or maybe. Edward said yes. So I said, okay, so when do you want to finish this assignment by, right? We continued to identify things that were big, overwhelming, and started breaking them into steps, into chunks, assigning deadlines for them. And I actually asked him to do this. I said, okay, will you show me that you set an alarm and send me proof when you have completed it? So between sessions, I would actually have him set an alarm and send me proof of completing it. Now, it wasn't because I wanted to torture him. It was because I wanted him to get in the habit of being accountable, right? And so by setting that alarm, it externalized and kind of rerouted him back to his tasks if he started to get distracted. And secondly, that's that concept of body doubling, right? When he's sending me proof, when he's engaging with another human, he feels accountable. A lot of people, they're emotionally regulated by people around them, right? They need that support. I know I'm emotionally regulated by my family. They help me stay, on track when things feel difficult. But the other thing I did was I used this tool. It's called TutorBird, and I took notes on what he said he was going to do, and then I emailed them to both him, his parents, and anyone else that we had designated to be working with him. So everyone was on the same page about what he was committed to. And by creating that circle of support, he felt accountable to the people around him because they knew what to check in with him about. Now, each meeting, I guided Edward through this cycle of completing assignments, submitting assignments, updating teachers, and asking for feedback. So he would send things like this. I just emailed you the following assignments. When you get a chance, would you please let me know if there's anything else I can do to earn an A on these assignments, right? So it's like if you have a project at work, you've done a lot of it, send it to someone, your boss, ask them, how would you correct this? Or is there anything else, do you need me to course correct? Are we on track, right? When you get people's buy-in, it saves you so much time in the long run because then they tell you exactly what they want from you and you can fix that. Now, I made this little image because this is what we were doing. Complete assignments, submit assignments, request feedback. And we just went through this cycle. And Edward started to grow stronger and stronger as he went through this process over and over. It became like a muscle that Suzanne described, where he was able to do this, something that had previously felt so challenging, overwhelming, and difficult. Because he was doing it repeatedly, he made a habit out of it. And what happened here was that Edward, while working with him as his executive function coach, my job was to actually pass this process to his family, pass the baton to them so they could support him. So to increase parental involvement, throughout the process, we held family team meetings. Now, the family team meeting is a core feature of this process. I'll explain to you why. A family team meeting is a structured decision-making meeting led by a trained facilitator. So typically, a coach would do that. However, parents can do this. They can have that family board meeting. And in the family team meeting, this meeting guides the student support team, parents, therapists, teachers, to use their collective wisdom and skills to support a student in reaching an agreed upon goal. So everyone's working together. Now, why do you hold this family team meeting? It's not to embarrass or make the child ashamed of something they haven't done. It's because this is the most powerful way to increase collective efficacy. Now, what is collective efficacy? Collective efficacy is a team's shared belief that through their collective action, they can positively influence student outcomes, including for students who are disengaged or disadvantaged. And we know that many students with ADHD are disengaged from school because of the challenge of self-regulating and participating in school. It's generally more challenging. So this is such a powerful strategy. Now, there's a guy named Hattie, he did research on what are the most powerful factors that influence student achievement. He took all the research on things that teachers and school staff could do. And he found that by a long shot, collective teacher efficacy was the most powerful strategy that can be used to improve student performance. Now, the other thing that stands out here is that parental involvement is much less impactful than collective teacher efficacy. And I say this to you for parents out there is because oftentimes parents get these guilt trips where they're like, it's my fault that my kid's not doing well in school, or if I'd only, disciplined them more, they would be doing this. But that's actually not the case. Your job as a parent, a family member, is to create a team to work with the teachers, the therapists, coaches, is to create a support network that your child feels safe and secure in, that they can fall back on and make mistakes in, so that they can move forward, right? And so when you start using what I call the family team meeting to increase that collective teacher or staff efficacy, you're using the most powerful technique we know to help students achieve greater. And the family team meeting is one of the most simple things in the world. Here's the agenda of the family team meeting. First, what is going well? In this case, all you do is you just ask everybody to share out something that's going well. Say, if anyone wants to share, you just say, share something positive, right? And you just make sure that no one says anything negative, like, well, I'm glad he's doing his work, but he really needs to do this. Nope. It's all about starting with the positives. And the reason for that is we go back to those first slides. You have to establish that secure attachment, that sense of safety for the student in this meeting, so that they're open and receptive to feedback. And speak from the heart. Kids want to know what people around them are feeling. They don't want just rote, robotic, diplomatic responses. They want to know how people are proud of them, what they're encouraged by. So speak from the heart. So here are examples of things you could say. I'm proud that you have been going to EF coaching sessions. I'm proud that you took out the garbage when I asked you last week. Remember, when you are sitting at the table with a student who's so used to people calling them lazy, daydreamer, unmotivated, can't do things, can't follow directions, when you say positive things, that starts to change their perception of themselves. The next step in the family team meeting, step number 2, is what needs to change. So this is the part where we can start to apply constructive feedback. So questions I'll ask is, what would you like to see different by our next family team meeting? And typically these meetings are 1 month apart. So ask the student once, maybe one of the parents says, I really need him to clean his room, and I need him to get this project done, and I need him to do his math homework. Ask the student, does that feel realistic to you? What you're hearing your parents say, does that feel realistic? And they say, well, actually, I feel like I can do this, but I can't do this part, right? So now you're creating this dialogue. And this is so important because oftentimes I see parents talking to the coach or talking to the therapist and then talking to the kid, but everybody's not talking to each other. And so that's called splintering, right? The parents getting mad at the kid through the coach, and then the coach is trying to go back to the kid and problem solve, and it just creates this unhealthy dynamic. So when you're all together, and when you as the facilitator are documenting, okay, student said they would do this, right? Parent wanted this, student said they're willing to do this. Now you're creating shared agreements. Now here are some do's and don'ts for these meetings. Do, be specific. For example, we all agreed that turning in your history final project by the end of the month is the most important goal. Does this work for you? What support do you need from the team to reach this goal, Edward? Do not vent. Why can't you just get work done like other students? That is not what these meetings are for. And the last step of this meeting is who does what by when. So in this step, you want to encourage parents, tutors, other supports to take ownership of plan aspects. As the facilitator or the coach of this meeting, this is how other people get involved and you start to strengthen that sense of interdependence. It's also a way for families to save money, right? If families aren't expecting their coach to do everything and they're relying on their different supports, such as dad helps with this, mom helps with this, uncle, tutor helps with this, you're not just putting all the burden on some expensive coach. You're distributing the work, which makes it easier on everybody. Second, write goals in a way that are smart. You don't want to write things like, my kid's going to be the best. You want to identify, he's going to earn blank on this by this date, right? That gives someone achievable, something they can track, something they can evaluate. And the last thing is schedule that next meeting before you leave, because if you stick to this process, it will work magic. If you start to follow through. And then at the next meeting, you say, okay, well, this worked, but this didn't. So we're going to try this again this month. So here's an example. I'm facilitating and I say, okay, sounds like we're all on the same page. Edward's going to have his final history project turned in before our meeting next month. Mom, you committed to buying Edward a handheld recorder so he can interview his grandparents about the project. Does that work for you still, Mom? She says, yeah, I can do that. Dad, you said you're going to act as a body double and sit with Edward after dinner for 1 hour each week night to be a support as needed. Does that still work for you? Okay, the dad's like, yep, I can do that. And then Edward, you said that you're going to put your phone in your parents' room until you've texted a picture, until you're ready to text a picture of what you have completed to Mom, Dad, and myself as the coach each school night. What time should we expect that by? I can do that by 7 p.m., he says, right? Is everybody on board with this plan? You've documented, you've got action steps for everybody, and you do this once a month. Man, that's going to turn the family into like a corporation that's helping this increase that collective efficacy for the student. So that is that second to final step, is that accountability, accountability, accountability. I'm so sad for students who people tell them to do certain things, but no one holds them accountable. Students need accountability. They need that someone who cares enough to challenge them to do things in a loving and kind way. I call it the no nonsense nurturer. So that's such an important part. So drop in the chat box, what helps you be accountable to yourself and or others? What's something that you do consistently or you engage in that helps you be accountable? I'll give you time to drop that in. Telling others my goal is, yes, just speaking it into existence. And I like to say the idea that you can speak, you can write things into existence. You can speak them into existence. If you put it out there, it's going to help people hold you accountable. It's going to help you identify things that are going to help you reach that goal. Crossing off your task list, D shared. Yeah, that's a great thing to do. Mindfulness calendar, Rachel shared, Mike shared. My wife and I set goals and hold each other accountable. Definitely, your partner is your best accountability partner, right? It's someone that's there all the time. Such a great way to kind of strengthen that relationship and use it in a positive way. So over time, this period of approximately 2 months, Edward started to change. I got this text message one day from Edward. He said, I've never been more consistent with my assignments than this week. Usually I'm doing it last minute. Having someone that I tell I'm going to finish it by this time has helped a lot, right? So I thumbs that up. I was so proud of him, so happy for him. And then he also sent this to me. I checked in because he had set a timer to do his bibliography, but I didn't hear from him. So I said, hey, have you finished the bibliography? He said, oh, sorry, I finished it and turned it in. I've never finished a project so early. He was crying, laughing, right? The little crying, laughing emoji. And I said, I'm so happy for you. I bet that feels so good. He said, yeah, it does, right? That enthusiasm was returning. So that's the last step in this PEMDAS order of operations for executive function coaching, is celebrate every little thing. Show them you're proud. And so Edward grades, they started to improve, but more importantly, Edward started to blossom, right? He started to fuel this sense of positive well-being and happiness because he was completing his goals. He was accountable to his community. He felt great about this. And so that changed Edward's disposition. And I got this message from his dad one day. He said, he seems to have a new level of motivation. And I said, well, what did you notice? Staying up late last night, working hard. He went to the study group late this afternoon and then dinner with his buddies, presumably ones from the group. Both good to see. And I said, I'm so glad to hear that, right? And that's that last step, is always show the student you're proud of them, even if it's what I call micro wins, even if it's those small steps, because that's going to reinforce them. That's going to help with that self-regulation piece. And motivation is when they know they're cared for, when they're safe, they're nurtured about these things that you value as a family. So you already shared that one. And so I want to share a couple things with you. What should you expect when you go through this process with a student? Well, this is something someone shared when their child went through this process. They said, having a partner and creating an independent, self-sufficient, and capable children is an unmeasurable gift for both our family and the world. Kenyatta and EFS have given our family so much more space to enjoy each other and feel supported. And that's what I want for you and your families, is that you have the space to enjoy each other because you have the tools to help your children with these challenges. Another parent said, the reduction in nightly stress The reduction of nightly stress of our homework in our house has been remarkable. The parent-child homework fight has been removed from the equation. And that's what I want for you. And it is possible. That's why I said there is so much hope if you use this methodology or something along these lines. Another student said to me, this has been the biggest game changer ever in my school life, right? That's what you want for your kid, to feel like school is manageable, that they can succeed in it, not that it's this depressing, overwhelming experience. So just to sum it all up, that PEMDAS order of operations for coaching is start with prioritizing that secure connection with your student. Establish those SMART goals so they know what they're working towards. Make everyone aware of those goals. Share them with the world. Share them with the teachers. Divide those goals into manageable chunks. Accountability, right? Just be there. Be present. One of the favorite things I saw when I was a young teacher and going into the classroom for the first time was someone put, good teaching is being near and involved, right? Just be near and involved. And then last, show them you're proud, right? Every step of the way, find something to be proud of. So I'd love to know what's one of your takeaways, something that you found of value in this presentation. Drop it in the chat box. I would love to know from people. That's the end of this. I'm looking forward to staying around, answering any questions, getting your feedback and thoughts. If you want to learn more about what I do, you can visit my website, efspecialist.com. You can follow me on TikTok or Instagram at Executive Function. So thanks so much. I'm going to stop my share now.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. And I put a link to your URL in the chat a little bit earlier so people could subscribe. That was such a great presentation. I got so much out of it and I was scribbling furiously. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah.
We did have a couple people send some questions through, and there may still be some while we go through these first couple that come through. So let's see. Someone said, you mentioned connection coming first. Yeah. What are some concrete ways that we can maybe engage a child who is defensive and acts like he or she does not want to be helped?
Yeah, that's really, really tough. So I think, if they're at that point where they don't even want to speak to you, maybe. And I feel like that's more of a parenting question and less of a coaching question, but I could be wrong. So drop it in the chat if I'm missing that. But I think starting by trying to notice what they're interested in and value, right? So I remember when I was working in a school, I was working in a what's called a counseling enriched classroom. And I was working with students who had failed in 6 schools, and they were in this small classroom with a therapist the whole day and a special education teacher like me. And it was for students with emotional disturbance as their qualifying IEP characteristic. And there were students who did not want to speak to any adults in there. And so one thing I did with them is I just kind of found ways to notice what they're interested in. Maybe it was a YouTube channel, and I said, oh, what channel is that? Why do you like it? What's your, and start to kind of engage with their interests before you start to tell them what they have to do with you, right? And sometimes that means taking a step back to take 3 steps forward. So maybe they aren't productive for a week, but you spend that week, learning about their favorite snacks and their favorite, YouTube channels. And maybe you go watch something that they say they like, and then you come back and you go, oh, I love that video. I found it so funny. Bring something that you learned about their interest to the table, so it feels authentic, right? Like, how nice was it when you were in school and you put your favorite song on the list or whatever, and your teacher went and listened to it and was like, that was a really good song, right? Or like someone actually cared about something you're interested in. It feels really powerful. So I think that's one thing that I would highly recommend doing, is just try to really figure out what that person values and is motivated by, and then use that as a bridge to connect with them. And once you have established that bridge, then you can start maybe asking them questions like, hey, is there anything on your mind you want to talk about before we work on school? Yeah. Right. And then the other part of that is being alone with them. Let's say, for example, you don't want to do this in front of everybody, so they feel like they have to, share their interests in front of a bunch of other kids. So when I was teaching online in a public school, I would do a breakout room with a kid and be like, hey, tell me how your day's going. When they don't feel that social pressure, sometimes that can be helpful, if that is a possibility.
That's great. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I loved what you said about, I certainly took this away, and I see somebody else mentioned it too about the trial. Yes, because that is amazing. I have a little negotiator in my house. And so, it's no more often than it's yes. So that using that system, I think seems like another really great way to, kind of build connection in a way too.
Absolutely. And I know, Suzanne, you were sharing you have some background in marketing. So I always like to say that like all these techniques that are used in your professional life, when you're using them to help a kid, it's great, right? It's like these are, there's nothing inherently wrong with marketing. If someone's, scared of it, or they feel like they're being manipulated into something. And when you market to a child effectively, you're getting them to invest in something that pays the best interest, which is their education.
Right.
So use those things to your advantage, because they work, right? It's human psychology, is that people want to take ownership of something. They don't want you to tell them what to do. They want to decide what to do.
Right.
They want to negotiate their way. You're right. You give them a false choice. You said, you want to start with this or this,
right.
Rather than, do you want to do your homework?
Exactly. Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is an interesting one, because I know I've heard people talk about executive function age being, that basically when people have ADHD, that sometimes we are a different executive function age. We might be 12 years old biologically, but maybe our executive function is a couple of years behind. So someone was actually asking, is there a place, or does this even exist, to find age or grade appropriate executive function skills? Like, how should we know at what age our kiddos should be working on which things?
Yeah, I actually had a slide, I deleted it. But one thing you could Google is, it's not necessarily just executive function, but if you Google like traits of a securely attached child, and you can see it by age, and you'll see some of the things that securely attached children have, right? And for example, like in middle school, they start to set their own goals. They start to, plan out their space and, do things that are going to help them be successful, which is often not the case for kids who are having executive function challenges. Is they're not doing those things that they need to progress, right? They're avoidant, or they don't have the skills. And so that's something you could Google, like Google secure traits of securely attached child, or, characteristics. But that's a really great question. I actually don't know if there's like a list, and now I want to make it. I want to go figure it out and make it. So check in with me in like a week. And,
I know, I thought that was a cool question.
I'll let you know. Thanks for bringing that up.
That's great. What age do you recommend working with students, and what age do you begin working with students? This person has a 4th grader. Is that too early?
Yeah, typically I think for executive function coaching specifically, it's best to start before they enter an environment where they will have a lot of different teachers to negotiate. So for example, I think late 5th grade, summer of 5th grade is a great time for most kids, because they're about to enter 6th grade. And that's when you go from typically having 1 teacher to 6 or 7 teachers. So that's a really great time to start. I think that there are ways to incorporate executive skill building younger than that. But as far as like hiring an educational therapist or an executive function coach, I wouldn't say it's something that you could put, definitely in person. You're not going to want to do it, or you're not going to want to do like online executive function coaching before 5th grade. It probably won't work that well, just because they're, not necessarily navigating a lot of different portals, not working with a bunch of different people, not sending emails. These skills are more essential for 5th grade upward. But there are things that you can do. You can use these strategies to help your child, take ownership of their toys, and do help with laundry, help them make decisions around things. Just always kind of trying to get their buy-in and their input as a habit in your home. I think is really helpful. So I don't really speak too much to 5th grade and below because my focus is really on middle, high school, and college students.
Okay, great. Thank you. Someone is asking, I want to help my son set smart goals. He always sets goals that are way too easy for him. Do you have any suggestions for helping him set more realistic goals?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah. So, I mean, maybe, helping him think of if it's that easy, maybe say, this is kind of more of an objective, right? But let's think of something that you like, it would take you, maybe you start with a time frame, right? It can't get done. It's something that can't get done in less than 3 months. You like, what's going to take you, so a grade in a class is a great example because that goal cannot be determined until the end of the semester, right? But there are ways to work on it the entire time. But maybe it's something, if they're interested in sports or, something that's going to require being broken into steps. So ask them, hey, can we break this into steps? And if they can't break it into small steps, then they probably need to expand the goal, right? So maybe saying, okay, if you're going to set a goal, there has to be at least 5 steps on the way to reaching that goal. And if not, let's try something different. And then also maybe try and finding ways to reinforce it, right? Like, hey, if we set something 3 months out, and even just by setting it, right? Since that's the skill you want to work on, you can earn this, or like, what would you want to earn if you do this, and kind of getting their buy-in so they feel motivated.
And if they're younger, is it kind of okay that the goals are maybe not super stretch goals because they're learning that skill of setting goals? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I think anytime you're achieving a goal, even if it's a to-do, but the kid thinks it's a goal, there's going to be some positive feelings and confidence associated with that. Like just like, you write something down and then they check it off, that's going to create that sense of euphoria and give them a little dopamine rush when they do that. So I don't think there's, that's a good problem to have, I would say, if their goals aren't lofty enough.
Yeah.
Because they probably will get loftier, and just naturally when school gets harder, things get more challenging. You got college, you're going to have to identify a college or find a job. Like, goals will naturally get loftier. So I would say, yeah, that's a good
Don't worry
problem.
about it too much. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Our 9-year-old keeps forgetting to bring his book home from school for homework. From these meetups, in our groups, that is a very common thing that happens. How do we react and help him? And also, even in general, helping him remember tasks seems to be challenging for him.
Yeah, I mean, that's tough, right? He's forgetting the book, then maybe he can't do his homework. So, I mean, the first thing I would do is like ask him, like, hey, I noticed, use that inquiry approach, that this is the 3rd time your book didn't come home from school. So really being curious rather than upset or judgmental. Like if a kid sees, you go, you didn't bring your book home? Oh, okay, let's figure it out. Like, they feel ashamed, right? They're going to immediately feel a sense of shame and embarrassment. So really checking your emotions when that happens is really important, so that they don't start to avoid you because they don't want to be embarrassed. So that's the first thing, is say, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? Like, I noticed this. I was wondering if you had any ideas on how we could make sure your book gets home every day, right? That would be a good step. Maybe they have a creative idea and they just, maybe there's something that they are going to come up with that you haven't thought about, and then they're executively deciding. If they don't have an idea, maybe say, hey, is it okay if we meet with your teacher and come up with a plan together? Because maybe the teacher has an idea, and so now you're engaging the teacher, and they're kind of like helping set up a plan in the classroom, because that's where the forgetting is happening, right? It's not being sent from the classroom. So involving, get others on the same page, right, is that step where you're going to get other people involved. So a solution might derive from there. And then if there's still an issue when you tried the teacher and you tried the student, then maybe just getting another book and saying, okay, we're going to have them in both places, and in the future we'll work on something else. But you don't want to force them into something if there's an easy solution, because there's other problems that are going to come up, or challenges that are maybe they need more kind of focus on.
For sure. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you ended with that idea, because I think that a lot of times if we can have accommodations for ourselves, I mean, as an adult with ADHD, if I have 2 sets of keys, then that eliminates the issue that I might have, like losing my keys or something like that. So yeah, sometimes we try very valiantly, but maybe an extra book is the way to go. That's great. Let's see, this one maybe we can combine. So someone is asking, how would you possibly help teenagers in boarding schools with limited phone calls to parents? And so I'm taking that to mean, like, does someone like yourself work with people that are in boarding schools when their parents aren't there? And how does that go down? And then we had another question from homeschooling families where their children are doing school online, and they want to know if they can work with executive function coaches when their children are not in a brick and mortar school. Like, do you work with people like that too? So hopefully that wasn't too compacted.
I'm going to keep them both up here. I'll get them. So the first one, working with a homeschool, or no, sorry, the second one was homeschool. The first one, boarding school. So yeah, I have worked with students in boarding school. It depends on what the school allows. Like sometimes boarding schools have a designated study time in the evening where they can go on their computer, and that's where a coaching session could happen, where they could work on these skills. So that's a possibility in that respect. I think with the limited phone calls with the family, that might be a great opportunity to have those family team meetings at designated times. So you're like setting goals. Maybe there's a team member from the school, maybe there's a counselor that can participate, so that they can give the input from the school side, if the student needs that type of accommodation or support. So that would be something I would try to implement, is either working with a coach or tapping into a resource at the boarding school. Maybe they have someone who can implement some of these strategies, and keep the family updated if possible, or do those periodic family team meetings to set goals and then meet a month later, check in what's not working, get the school aware of what's going on. So those are options. But yeah, you definitely have less input, if they're out of boarding school. So you either want to find a way to leverage a resource in the school, or accept that. That's a tough situation. If you really want to, be present at the same time they're away. And then for a family that homeschools, yes, I think we do work with students who homeschool, and there's different scenarios. So some students who are homeschooling, they use like Edgenuity or Acellus or different online learning programs. And so that's a great tool. Those are great tools where you can help them set goals within the program, right? Like many of those programs have specific numbers of steps they need to take to complete the course, and they can see exactly what they need to do. So you can take those steps, you can divide it by the number of days in that semester, and you can help them understand, like, what do they need to do each day. You can hold them accountable. You can help them set up graphic organizers to track those things. So I think with that part, it's just helping them understand, like, what are the expectations that you need to do to complete this course, even though you're doing it from home. How do we break that into manageable chunks and backwards plan? And then what are the things you need to do each week? And having that type of support, I've seen it be really helpful for homeschool students, because they don't have the range of teachers that might be teaching this. So it's a great opportunity to work with a coach, or to implement these if you're the parent doing the teaching those executive function skills alongside of the content that they're learning.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. Let's see, someone's asking a question. Do many children, teens with ADHD, have poor penmanship? I think that's a question for in general, but yes, that is a high number of people with ADHD have dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia. So it's often a comorbidity. Thank you for that question.
Yeah.
And
I wanted to drop some, one of my mentors, Dr. Daniel Franklin. So maybe some people know him from here. He was my mentor to become a professional ed therapist. He wrote a great book called Learning and Language-Based Disorders, I think.
Yes.
And those 4 disorders, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyslexia, and I'm probably forgetting one of them. But those are related to, attention and to memory and things like that. So there's definitely a link between that. It's not the case for all students, but there are links to being able to, executively break things down into, discrete bits and communicate them. And so that's something that, in that case, you maybe want to help them have the accommodation of using a keyboard or, orally communicating their ideas.
Yeah, that's great. My son actually has dysgraphia, and so we've used a lot of keyboards, and when he was younger, even dictation and things like that. So you can even get creative with accommodations for even really little ones as they're kind of working through that in OT. Oh, she asked if you could repeat the name of the book and the author.
Yeah, so the author is Dr. Daniel Franklin. And then I can't remember the exact title, but it's like language-based learning disorders. Like if you Google Dr. Daniel Franklin language-based learning, it'll pop up. His website is also Franklin Education Company or Co. So you'll definitely find him if you put in Dr. Daniel Franklin, and I'll drop his name in the chat box so you can Google him.
There you go.
There you go. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That has a link to the book. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sean, for being here. And thank you all so much for spending the evening with us. We put the link in the chat to both Sean's website and also to make a donation to children and adults with ADHD. If you are so inclined, we would greatly appreciate it. And you can find on Meetup our upcoming meetings this year, this month. We have our regularly scheduled support groups on Sunday evenings for adults, and then our parent group is once a month on the first Friday of the month. So thank you again, Sean, and we really appreciate having you here tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, Suzanne, for inviting me to speak, and thank you so much, everybody, for lending me your ears and your attention. I know attention is like the most valuable thing on this earth, and I really appreciate you giving it to me tonight. So wishing you all the best, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you so much, Sean. Have a great evening, everyone. Bye-bye.